Hello, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And since we're on the topic, I think let's just try to make things a little more clearer. Because this is also an ongoing, a running theme, and it is something that I'm glad that more and more people are focusing on, even though these are things that I said I've touched on every now and then for years. But keeping in mind again my previous podcast where I said that I hope that my previous podcasts, as in the ones prior to my last podcast, that they would help one understand what I always mean when I say that we will learn to sift what matters and what doesn't matter. If I've talked about many of these things in various different podcasts till date. And I'm always trying to hope to sum them all up at one point so that then it becomes easier for people to understand what it is that I'm putting together. Like, for example, as I said, understanding what really matters with regards to this world and keeping in mind that that this world isn't forever. You know that this world is a transition, really, towards a destination. And then, so what people think and refer to as materialism or materialistic is often not. For example, taking care of things that you have, allowing things to have sentimental value, that is not materialism. No, that is actually a very, very good trait of character. It means you know the value of your hard earned money, for example. It may also mean you know the value of getting something that you like and keeping it in good condition, which also would mean you know the value of durability, sustainability, and you know the value of environmental cleanliness. You know the value of not wasting. All these values were brought down generation to generation, by the way. And when we suddenly whip around and call people materialistic for this reason, that is one of the biggest examples of how we use words wrongly. And also why it is very important for people to understand, to get education, to observe, and to appreciate. Okay? Materialism is kowtowing to things that man decided had value or have value. You understand? For example, who decided that metals are precious or not? Who decided stones are precious, semi-precious or not? Who decided which painting is worth millions and which painter is worth millions? Who decided which book is a bestseller? Who decided which brand is a brand? You see where I'm going with that? These are all subjective. And when you start pouring your energy into that, when you start following the crowd there, that is materialism. That is you giving more importance to this world. That is you indulging in the worldly affairs, disregarding the actual meaning and purpose of life. You see, this is where you need to now understand how to sift what matters with what doesn't. What matters is you having the ability to take care of what you have so that you can have an old car, an old bike, an old pair of boots, an old sweater, an old jacket, for example, an old jacket or an old coat or an old house, and how you try to keep maintaining it, how you try to keep it for as long as possible in the best possible manner. That shows a sense of responsibility, a sense of accountability, a sense of, again, also caring for the environment. For example, it's so easy to discard even a house and then go buy a new one. because you think that it costs you way too much money to maintain an old house, which is true. It is true. It can cost you way too much to maintain an old house, so why not just go and buy a new house or make a new house? But see, what you're doing is you're adding to the carbon footprints. Even architects now are trying to look for ways where they can minimize the footprints on earth, when they're constructing a house, when they're constructing buildings, but especially houses. Because again, in a way, you're going back to basics. How in the olden times when people made homes, they tried to put the least amount of footprint on earth and on the environment. In other words, they tried to stay in harmony with the existing environment. But these past few decades, what we've seen is this massive surge of footprints, which means, in the name of development, cutting down more and more of the natural environment to give way to more and more of urbanization, right? And now we are all facing the impact of it, where we get smogs, where we get pollutions, where we get, we get e-waste, we get industrial waste, we get all kinds of waste, we get constructional waste, So we're getting all these kinds of impacts, negative impacts that have long-lasting damage on the environment. For example, I keep on giving the example of Lahore itself. Look at Lahore. You do realize that until the early 2000s, in fact, until even the mid 2000s, until the mid 2000s, Lahore was known as a naturally green city. Yeah, it was known as a green city, not just any green city, a naturally green city. What does that mean? You understand? It wasn't made into a green city. Its greenery was kept intact, even with all the urbanization, with all the development, with all the road working, with all the infrastructure, everything, right? Now, when did destruction occur? When Nawaz Sharif and Shahbaz Sharif became they became part of the Punjab government, and when Shahbaz Sharif became the chief minister the last time round, before Imran Khan's tenure, when Shahbaz Sharif became the chief minister of Punjab, and he, just for the sake of kickbacks, started making nonsensical widening of the canal road, in which he encroached upon and destroyed 20%, and this is the official, which I believe was actually higher unofficially, but okay, let's go with the official report. Officially, he destroyed 20% of Lahore's greenery, mostly in the forms of the green belts. He encroached upon green belts throughout the Canal Road area, which basically goes through Lahore. Then you can add another 10 to 15% of greenery lost when they decided to make the orange train, in which they literally looted and plundered farmlands and agricultural lands around the area. So again, you have now a total of 30+% of Lahore's greenery taken away from you within a span of just 2 years. Within 2 years, they wreaked all that havoc. And after that, what did we get then? All of a sudden, smog. Right? 2017 onwards, the pollution rate in Lahore increased. We started getting more and more smogs. Lahore was no longer a green city. It became a polluted city, and it gave the illusion of being a dirty city, despite the fact that Lahore could be anything, but it's never dirty. If anything, it's one of the cleanest cities in the world, like Islamabad. But because of the smog and because of the added waste of burning toxic waste along the roadsides, along the green belts, near the airport side, where illegal societies were being made by the army and Nawaz Sharif, Shahbaz Sharif's government, and because they were part of the land mafia, so they kept on encroaching upon farmlands, agricultural lands, on the suburbs and the villages, extending past Lahore all the way towards the airport and past that. And then you saw people burning waste along the side. So that added to the pollution, it added to the smog. And obviously, because you no longer have those trees, the way they brutally cut down those old trees, which weren't just old, it's not like they were old enough that they should be cut down, they were old enough to be rare. They were extinct now. These were very rare, extinct trees, and they were fully grown trees that were giving you all the shade possible. And now it doesn't matter that now we started replanting those trees. First of all, half of your green belt throughout Lahore is gone on either side. Number one. Number two, with that, your trees have gone. So now, even if you do plant your trees, it will take at least another 2 decades for them to grow to that height, if you're lucky. It's a slow process. People keep cutting down trees, but they don't plant as many as they cut down. And then when they do finally start planting them, again, as I said, it will take time for them to grow. Even if you do plant them the minute you have cut down a tree, it will still take decades to grow. So, what matters? What doesn't matter? So, previous civilizations had enough knowledge, common sense, and information and foresight to know that less of the footprints on Earth, the better off we are. And again, I'll remind you, those civilizations were not medieval. In fact, you can find evidence very soon that my belief that previous civilizations each reached the peak, the pinnacle of knowledge and of technology and of science more than even we have yet reached. And that is what led ultimately to their destruction. Each civilization that came had already touched upon and reached all those peaks of knowledge, information, of technology, of science, of development, that we are still on the edge of reaching or accomplishing. And then they self-destructed. When we will reach there, we will self-destruct too. Each time a civilization self-destructs, everything that they had learned, everything that they had put forward, every technology, every information, every development that they had put forward and used, it went away with them. And we had to start from scratch again. And you will see it will happen again and again. So, the previous civilizations were not stupid, is what I'm saying. They knew what they were doing. They had more foresight than we do. We are on a path of destruction. We are actually, as I said, with each civilization, it seems we just have regressed. Our civilization is, in fact, the most regressed of all the previous civilizations in so many ways. Not only do we have all the faults and flaws and sins of all the previous civilizations put together, but we also are more destructive, more irrational than all of them put together. We're literally driving this earth to its own demise. We're driving our own civilization to our own demise. We are in a hurry. We're literally in a hurry, it seems. We're speeding it up. So, what matters? This is materialism. What matters? Keep trying to keep what you have for as long as possible and only getting what you need, right? Again, what matters? Information, knowledge. The more you know, the more you understand. The more your mind opens, the more you can observe things, the more you can reach to conclusions, the more power you can have. Right? Number 3, who or what is the deciding factor of what is precious, what is not, what is important, what is not, what has value, what does not? You should have the ability to decide for yourself what is important for you in your life. Do not follow the herd. Remember, we all have our own path. We need to follow that path. We need to find out what that path is instead of getting lost in the herd and following anybody and everybody, like dumb sheep. Even sheep are not that dumb. So your Gucci's and your Versace's and your Lamborghinis and your Mercedes, do they matter? That is the point here. Do they matter? No. What matters is that you have clothes that you can wear. What matters is that you have a car that you can use. What matters is that you have a house that you can live in. What matters is that you can make the most of what you have. It's good to have wishes, and it's good to see if you can get there. It's good to see if you can get to that point where you can have what you want. That's all fine. It's a very good way to challenge yourself to work hard. If that helps you channel your energy the right way, go for it. But again, if your whole point of stressing in life is that why can't I have a Gucci? Why can't I have Adidas? Why can't I have a Sambas? Why can't I have what all these influencers are showing that they have? Why can't I make money quick? Why can't I have shortcuts? So that is where we spiral down the rabbit lane, okay, or the rabbit hole. That is where we go down and we cease to forget what matters and what doesn't. And that is when we also cease to blur the lines between what is right and what is wrong, what is haram and what is halal. For example, as we keep on saying, we doubt that there is any person in Pakistan, especially any person working in the public sector, in the government agencies, in the government organizations, there is hardly a person who's probably earning halal. Because even for the smallest of things, they want bribes. Even if it is to do their own job, they want bribes. And we know that the giver and the taker of bribes both go to hell. But here we beg the question now that we are forced to bribe them to make them do what is their job. So who here is the giver and taker of bribe, and how is the giver of the bribe supposed to go to hell for bribing a person to do his own freaking job? Because otherwise they will not just not do the job, but they will mess your job. Right? Your own government is extorting money from you in the form of illegal taxes, through bills, through taxes generally, right? And then through other miscellaneous. So, miscellaneous forms. So explain to us, where is it that we're supposed to go, where we're forced to constantly give out of our hard-earned money to people who are extorting that money from us, and they have nothing to show for it. So what matters? The fact that we are forced to pay insurance for cars, for example, and we never get that money. It is our own money that we're paying. I mean, thankfully, because it's a Muslim country, we cannot be forced to pay insurance for cars. But generally, we do tend to, especially when you buy a new car. And there's another problem, is when you buy a new car and you take loans from banks. Again, banks, despite the fact that you're in a Muslim country like Pakistan, your banks have riba. They have interest-based loans. And they claim they don't, but it is very obviously so. And similarly, the insurance companies claim that, they're not on the interest-based, but they are, because first of all, they're taking your money. But when you do have an accident, They never give you that money for insurance purposes. And this is why there is no concept of lease and mortgage in Muslim countries as such. As you can see, there are bank loans, but there's no lease and mortgage in the traditional sense as you have it in the West, because it again is interest based and it goes against Islam completely. But who's to say that your banks in their loan programs are actually following Islam? You can't say. You don't know what they're doing. They're probably going through loopholes and saying, oh, it's technically correct, but it's not. Who's to pay for that? So it is better to live within your means than to go all out just for the sake of short term material gains. Because at the end of the day, tell me, who's going to care if you do or do not have a Gucci, Versace, or Adidas or Sambas? I mean, seriously, who cares at the end of the day whether you have a Porsche or you have a Honda Civic or you have a Suzuki? Who cares at the end of the day? The main factor here is that you are supposed to be comfortable, that you know that you don't owe anybody anything, and you know that you're not going to be in trouble in case, God forbid, anything goes wrong. And you know that you will not owe anybody anything. And you will always sleep with a clear mind because you know that you haven't done anything or earned haram in your desire to get worldly benefits in the shortest span of time. That is materialism. Trying to achieve materialistic goals by quick, rich schemes, indulging yourself in such materialistic aspects or materialistic worlds. This is materialism. Going for worldly benefits, taking short term routes or shortcuts, going for quick, rich schemes where, again, you may have quick success, but in the long term, you will end up in a bigger misery than where you started from. So, again, tell me what matters. We cannot allow influencers or and first of all, why are we even getting influenced in the first place? That's another problem. Because you do realize that in Islam, admiring somebody to such an extent where you want to be that person or where you want to mimic that person or where you're almost in the form of where you could almost worship that person, that is all haram too. Right? Obsessing over someone to this extent where you become an actual fanatic over that person, that is haram. Why? Because it doesn't help you. If anything, it disturbs with the balance of your mental health. It can derail you from sanity, which is what is happening nowadays. Is you see people are constantly looking at these people, the vloggers, the so-called influencers, and despite the fact that you even are beginning to have an idea that whatever it is that they're putting out there, whatever it is that they're showing you is fake. It's all fake. This is not their real lives. They aren't actually as rich as they are showing you that they have become. They are not actually living the lifestyle that they're showing you that they're living. Most of the things they get is either free for PR purposes, or they just do a one-day shoot. They enter some place and they pretend it's theirs and they do a one-day it's literally all acting, and it's all just fake flex, really. So you think they're flexing, but they have nothing to flex. It's all fake, and they go about their own lives while you're left there drooling and envious and begrudging, and then thinking now of how to achieve that lifestyle as soon as possible. That is why we say that media also can educate people and it can also ruin societies. So if you have, for example, dramas in which you're showing everybody's rich, which is why people have blamed Indian dramas for being the main culprit of making the subcontinental societies more and more corrupt, more and more dishonest, and in sort of exasperating the um, the people, and also in increasing crime rate, because this whole quick rich schemes that began was because of this influence of seeing these unrealistic dramas that India was producing, these soap operas where they were showing that everybody's rich and everybody's, laden with gold from head to foot, and everybody's in these big huge mansions. And so what people started doing, they started literally migrating from villages to urban areas with the sole purpose of now looking um, looking for different ways on how to make money very quickly. So they would start, scaling houses, pretending that they're looking for work as servants or help, or maids or drivers or guards and all, and then they would start stealing from those homes, if you remember. Or they would then start becoming, they would become sort of gangs where one person would come take work at somebody's place, and they will start secretly checking all your cupboards and your rooms and your homes and all, and then after maybe a month or two, when you're not at home, conveniently behind your back, suddenly you're robbed, and then your servant's done a runner. And who's to blame for that? Again, the media that brain rotted and brainwashed the people to this extent, where they thought, we need to get rich, we don't care how, we want that life that they're showing in their dramas every day. And now the influencers have started that. We finally banned all those dramas, but then now in social media, the influencers have started that. But fortunately, in a way, I guess, the what the influencers have done instead is that they've made people want to become influencers like them. So then more and more people went towards TikTok, and more people went towards social media and making reels and shorts, instead of thinking that, oh, let's go and start robbing houses again. Yeah, I guess in a way we can call that fortunate, that it only ended up making more and more people want to join the social media uh, world, because first of all, it was free. It doesn't take any money. You don't need any money to, everybody has a mobile, everybody has the internet in some form or another. So, and you don't need any help to make TikTok reels or to make shorts or to make anything. you know all you have to do is to just make it and upload it, and there you are. But then within that, when the greed emerges, then what is it? Then you start taking sponsors and all, and then again you want now to get rich quicker, so you go into the way that your famous influencers have recently gone into, and that is promoting games that were actually gambling. Now, actually, one would blame the government here, because your army chief is so hell bent on censoring vlogs of analysts and journalists and people who are trying to speak up about what's going on in Pakistan. They're so busy censoring that, but they never bothered to censor the games the, that have gambling in them, that are being promoted constantly on YouTube. They never thought about that. No, that comes under free will and free speech, but and that comes under the freedom of expression and the freedom to share. Oh yeah, that is all about free. But I'm damned if I allow a certain vlogger to talk about what's going on in Pakistan, and I'm damned if I'm going to allow a certain journalist to speak the truth about what's going on. Amazing. Just amazing. So, again, this is how you try to sift between what matters and what doesn't, what is important, what isn't, what is actually giving you worldly gain, what is the definition of materialism, what and then what is not. Remember, everything is a lie. Okay? As I said, these influencers, the actors, everything is always a lie. What is the truth is what you're seeing around you. Everybody's struggling. And right now, thanks to the governments that are prepping for war, your economical crisis is only going to increase. The inflation is going to increase, joblessness is going to increase, okay? And it's global, as you can see now. It's global. It's not just Pakistan, it's the whole world. Everybody is going down that path of full-on crisis. Grocery rates have increased, not just in Pakistan, but they've increased in the UK, they've increased in America, they've increased in other countries. Petroleum rates, petrol rates, they have increased all over the world, except for a few countries, maybe, especially those that are producing them. Okay? Any and every country that is tied up in the geopolitics is going to have a huge, huge economy blow. Okay? As in an economy crisis. We're going to have job crisis even more than we already do. We're going to have more economical crisis. We're going to have more social crisis. We're going to have more crime rates. We're going to have more of everything negative. Why? Because this is induced by the governments and the armies all over the world, because they are stealing all your resources so that they have enough to sustain them through the war. This is also something that I mentioned in many of my podcasts for the past 2 years. I have said this over and over again. So this is how we tend to understand what matters. What matters is that you keep your head on straight. What matters is you get your act together. What matters is you realize what is important, what is not important, which means that what is important is that you do not get influenced by people. What is important is that you stay grounded with reality. What is important is that we stay within our means for long-term comfort. What matters is that we treat what we have as if it is the most valuable thing ever, instead of roughly using what we have, breaking it, shattering it, and then going off to buy something that is double the monetary value, but not even half the quality. Your old crockery, believe me, is 1,000 times better than the newly advertised. Don't go for these newfangled things that, this is the new safe, this is the new environmentally safe crockery, this is the new environmentally safe utensil, this is the new environmentally safe cooking pan or frying pan or whatever. No. If what we have has lasted us all these years and it has lasted us decades and we're fine, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, you should be more concerned about the new things that you're buying, because they are mostly not what they claim to be. The quality sucks. They're so expensive and they're not worth the money. You have something that has lasted you 3 decades and it is still as good as new. Why would you want to throw it away and get something that would not last you 2 years? And for what? Double the price. That is how you sift what matters. That is how you see gains versus losses. That is how you see what helps in the long term and what doesn't. And that is how you see what is materialism and what isn't. All these things are materialism. Trying to save yourself from all of these expenses, trying to save yourself from all of these, these overconsumption, antics, that is when you're not being materialistic. That is when you're actually looking at what matters. I hope that has helped. And this is me signing out खुदा हाफिज.